Hello and welcome. My name is Meepolis, they, she, he, and this channel is my way of trying to actually reflect on what I read. Mostly comics, but I also post micro reviews of the audiobooks I listen to quarterly. I generally use video game footage for the backgrounds for these non-review videos, but since this has also turned into my annual channel trailer update, I decided to feature flip-throughs of some of my favorite reads this past year instead, since that is more representative of my channel. But before we look forward, let's look back briefly at my 2022 goals. I'll post the timestamps in the description, so feel free to skip around as you desire. First off, this was the year I broke with tradition and upped my Goodreads reading goal from 72 to 100. This was mostly because I almost always read more than 100 comics and audiobooks, and it's a nice round number. And I did end up reading about 225 books this year. My general inclination to not try to outdo myself each year with a Goodreads reading goal was certainly the right one. I read just over 300 books last year because of COVID, and I was never going to outdo that this year. Lol. Of those books, I did manage to reach my goal of 30 not comics by creators from Oceania, the island nations of Southeast Asia that I mistakenly thought were part of Oceania when I originally planned these geographic sections, and Pacific Islands. You will obviously be getting more details about these books when I publish my fourth quarter/yearly wrap-up, hopefully next week. And watching the last part of my goals video, I was honestly not that surprised that I didn't remember, let alone complete, any of the more personal goals for 2022. Did not set myself up for success this year. That said, I still managed to do some things that make me feel like this year was still generally an accomplishment, so we shall survive. Now on to 2023, which I'm almost certain will not be a better year generally, and maybe worse even than this year, globally speaking. We shall see. Starting out with the easy stuff, obviously I'm going to set my Goodreads goal to 100 books once again. My area of focus for not comic books reading this year is the final geographic area on planet Earth that I have yet to focus on, namely reading 30 books from Europe, Ireland, the UK, and Iceland. That said, I will try and focus even more specifically on the countries that I don't already often find myself reading, and or writers who fall outside of the cis, white, able-bodied, straight, affluent crowd, who do in fact live all over the place. We shall see how it goes. A new sort of goal for myself, reading-wise, is that I would like to read 6 books about comics this year. So far in my time here on this channel, I've read maybe 2 or 3 books written about comics. Native Americans in Comic Books, A Critical Study by Michael Sheashe, and Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics and Reinventing Comics, themselves also comics, being the titles that readily come to mind. But of course, most of the ones currently languishing on my TBR list are very text-heavy, which I find very intimidating. That said, as I continue to try and get better at this whole reading and reviewing comics thing, it does seem like I could try and read some more academic texts on the subject. Any recommendations from you all would be awesome. Of course, I will also be participating in the Realm of Comics reading group again this year. They managed to release their TBR for this year hours after I had finalized mine for January, so I'll be starting at a bit of a disadvantage. Plus, unlike last year, I've only read one of these books previously, so I might just try and review the first 3 months worth in February. We shall see. Link to the announcement video in the cards, and I would highly recommend you join in. Looking at channel things, the goal this year is 2 reviews a week and trying to resist the urge to make too many other videos. I'm also going to keep paying more attention to my monthly cycle more than my weekly cycle. Of course, if I could get back into the pattern of posting on 2 specific days a week, that would be great, but trying to hit the arbitrary checklist of manga or mainstream and something not that each week is not conducive to hitting each of my goals for my monthly TBRs, which is to hit 2 queer books, 1 book by a Black creator, 1 book by an Indigenous creator, a book off my anti-ableism reading list, ideally 2 manga, and 1 Vertigo title each month, even if sometimes 1 book can check off multiple categories. And eventually my channel banner will reflect this change. I'm currently in the process of commissioning an artist to draw a new avatar for me, so I'll probably wait to do more rebranding. As usual, I'll be taking September off, which I mostly bring up because I know a lot of us struggle with taking time away from YouTube. Would recommend from time to time. I'm also going to continue not to set goals around channel growth, although obviously the steady growth over the past few years has been really nice and a source of pride for me. It's really not within my control though, so I don't want to set expectations that may, somewhat arbitrarily, be fulfilled. Or not. The other channel-related goal is to do a bit more with my WordPress blog. To give a brief overview, when I decided to start reviewing comics, I thought about starting a blog, but decided not to because my grammar is not always the best, despite being an avid reader. definitely one of those ignored hints that I was not neurotypical. And that's why I started a YouTube, where I initially didn't even write scripts. But one thing led to another, and I started writing scripts. And then I started using them to closed caption my videos. And finally, I started publishing them on a free WordPress alongside my videos, in case people preferred reading my content rather than watching it. I'm still more than a little self-conscious about my grammar, and thank God daily for spell check. But it being a transcript seems to work. I don't know. People do follow me on there. Fast forward to the past month when I decided to follow the crowd and join Mastodon, I started rethinking my social media strategy, so when someone basically asked me for a transcript after I posted a link to YouTube, I decided that I would start posting the link to my WordPress to social media, rather than directly linking to my YouTube. But that did seem to point towards me putting a bit more effort into this blog thing. So far that has meant actually adding the links to the transcript when I reference cards in videos and links in the description, etc. But there's probably more to do. Otherwise, I guess I'll be playing it by ear, read some other reading blogs, and figuring out conventions, etc. Speaking of other platforms, I might start posting on TikTok more again. The major barriers that I was facing with that platform is that I didn't have a cell phone tripod, and I hated how my voice sounded using my phone to record. Between finally purchasing a cell phone tripod and the introduction of voice filters, I think this might work. I do really enjoy TikTok, so it'd be nice to get a bit more involved. And finally, I've recently felt a strong urge to really get into anime a bit. It's not that I've never watched anime, but my preference has always been to read manga, with very few exceptions, namely Mushishi and Princess Jellyfish. That said, there are a lot of popular anime that I will never feel like reading, but I kind of feel like participating in and consuming. So anime seems to be the way to go. Will I talk about these on the channel? I don't know. If I actually end up watching a substantial amount, perhaps I'll end up doing periodic wrap-ups like how I talk about my not comic reading. What do you think y'all would enjoy? I'm currently in the process of watching Cowboy Bebop with my partner, with plans to go on to Outlaw Star, one of the first anime I ever got into, before I even knew manga was a thing, and Trigun. I've also started One Piece for some reason, and I do want to watch the Fruits Baskets animes and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood anime before I release my reviews of each of those series. I already watched and, frankly, strongly disliked the original Fullmetal Alchemist anime for ideological reasons. So yeah, we shall see how that goes. To conclude, I use Joplin to keep my different reviews organized, and another change I'm making this year is instead of burying this script underneath all of my other not review scripts, I gave it its own tab. So that will stay near the top of my script list. So hopefully it'll stay more top of mind this year. We shall see. Bye y'all, keep reading, and organized end capitalist oppression. And as always, Literally Graphic is created on land that should be given back to the traditional landholders, which in this case is, to my knowledge, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, Anishinaabe people, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat Nation.